Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday afternoon. Hope yours is going well. We are almost there, guys, after more than a month of talking mostly about rumors and spinning our wheels and not really having anything concrete to discuss. We're going to actually get some real stuff in a couple days here. We are just 3 days away from NFL free agency actually starting. Teams will actually be allowed to sign with other teams in 3 days. So we got a busy schedule ahead of us. Tomorrow, players will be able to start negotiating with other teams, and then we'll actually see the signings pick up on Wednesday. So the plan is I'm going to spend these last few days between now and free agency summarizing my off-season hopes. And then on the day that free agency starts, I'm going to be running an all-day stream where we can keep track of all the happenings and discuss them on a live stream. I know a lot of people are going to be at work. I'm going to start the stream around 12:30 my time on Wednesday, and we're just going to go from there. We're going to do the same thing on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, basically throughout the entire period where major free agent happenings are going to go down. We're probably going to see a lot of the big-time players get signed in that window, so we're going to be streaming pretty much all throughout the day on those first 5 days. Before we get there, however, I want to summarize everything that I've been going over for the past month in terms of what I want this team to do this offseason. And before we dive into my actual offseason plan, I want to stress one thing. This is something of an ideal offseason for me. It is not the only offseason plan that I like. It is not the only off-season plan that would get me really excited. There might even be a scenario or two out there that I like a little better than the one I'm about to present. But this is one that I really like, that I think can happen, and I think puts us in a great position going into 2021 to win a lot of games and maybe even compete for a title. So if you see something in my off-season plan and you feel like you can do better, or you think you know of something that is just as good, or maybe you don't even like something that I'm suggesting, just know whatever it is that you want to do, there's a decent chance I would be on board with that as well. I just don't want to go over every scenario that I would like because that would take all day. So we're just going to go over this one. This is kind of my favorite off-season scenario as of right now, and we can build on it in ways that make sense. So let's go ahead and jump on over to the Seahawks offseason plan written by yours truly. Okay, so today we're going to cover what I want to do with free agents or free agents to be that were on the Seahawks in 2020. So outgoing free agents, who do you keep, who do you let go, how do you negotiate with them, what are you willing to offer them, etc. Tomorrow we're going to go over the outside players that I would like to pull in over the next month or two. So first, we need to create some cap space. I think we probably need a little more cap space, not a lot, but a little. So ways in which this team can currently create cap space. Number one would be restructure Russell Wilson. And by the way, I have heard rumors I will grant you, but somewhat reliable and verifiable rumors that the Seahawks are about to restructure with Wilson. If that happens, we will have plenty of cap room, and Wilson will not be traded this offseason. The odds of Wilson getting traded after a restructure are basically zero. So keep an eye on that. That would take care of most, if not all, of the problems. Next, you can extend Jamal Adams. That would probably free up a few $1 million this year because you can extend him in a way that pays him a lot of money at the back end of his contract and only pay him a little bit for the first year, maybe even 2 years. And that's one way to create at least a few million. And this is stuff that is optional. Some of it appeals to me, some of it doesn't. But the third thing you can do is extend or cut or trade some of your veterans. And the players we could do this to include Tyler Lockett, Bobby Wagner, Jerron Reed, Dwayne Brown, Brandon Shell, and Quandre Diggs. Now, I feel differently about these players depending on who they are. For instance, I don't think you can trade Brandon Shell. I'm sure you would just have to cut him. I don't think you can trade Dwayne Brown because he's so old. You probably have to cut him. So, in that case, the only decision to make is cut or keep. But then you have players like Tyler Lockett, who I very clearly believe, who I think it's very clear has trade value. You could trade Lockett and get probably a second rounder or at least a high third round pick. Reed, you could probably get like a fifth or sixth round pick. Wagner, maybe about the same, maybe a fourth rounder. Diggs, maybe something similar. But if you get rid of these players or extend them, and I don't know if I love that idea, but you can free up some cap space. Trading Lockett saves about $10 million. I think that cutting Shell would save like 3.5. Cutting Dwayne Brown would save, I think, 11 million or something like that. So there's a lot of money you can create here. I'm not going to say what we should do. I'm not going to say what we shouldn't do. I'm not going to get into that because that opens up a whole rabbit hole that I'm not going to crawl into right now. But suffice to say, if you really want to create money, these 6 players can either be let go or they can be extended. All right, now let's move into the players that I want to keep. These are players who were Seahawks in 2020, who I want to be Seahawks again in 2021. And first, we're going to start with the big gun. This is a guy we actually released, so his circumstance is a little different from these other guys. But at the end of the day, oh, I'm sorry, little typo here. There you go. All right, anyway, yeah, Carlos Dunlap. I do want to bring Carlos Dunlap back. I think his contract that we could reasonably expect to have to give him in order to get him to come back would be about 3 years and $30 million, $10 million a year. But that first year, the 2021 year, he might only count 3 or 4 million against the cap. That's one of the ways in which you can be creative to get good players for not a lot of money right now. So offer him 3 years, 30 million. I think he would take that. If you can't get Dunlap or you decide you don't want him for some reason, there are other players out there you could get for a roughly similar price who would give you roughly similar production. But I think just keeping Dunlap would be ideal because we know he can be very good in this defense. We saw it last year. And 3 years, 30 million strikes me as very much fine. So that's the first player I want to bring back. And I say 3 years, 30 million. Next, we have defensive tackle Poona Ford. And I think keeping Poona is a no-brainer because he's still restricted. So you slap the second round tender on Poona and you give him 1 year, 3.4 million, fully guaranteed. And he basically gets a year to showcase himself before he gets a bigger contract in 2022. And unless he wants to retire, he will sign the tender. And I don't think any team is going to be willing to give up their second round pick for Poona. He's good, but I don't think he's second round pick good. I think there are plenty of defensive tackles out there who are as good or better than Poona that teams can get if they want to get a defensive tackle. I just don't see anybody giving up the second round pick. And honestly, if a team wants to, then I'm okay with that. I'm not going to hate on that. Okay, next we have Quentin Dunbar. I'm a little hesitant on this one, but I do think I want to bring him back. If he's willing to take a discount because of how bad he was last year and how injury prone he was last year, I say 2 years, 12 million. A lot of websites think he's going to get a lot more than this, but I don't see how he can really ask for very much more than this after the year he just had. So, yeah, Quentin Dunbar, 2 years, 12 million. Sign me up for that. And those are the big ticket guys that I would like to bring in, basically. These are the guys who would have a big role to play in the 2021 Seahawks who I actually want to bring back. Okay, we also have some lower tier guys that I do want to bring back in 2021. Obviously, the priority on these guys is not nearly as high. They are easily replaceable, but I feel like given our circumstance, it behooves us to bring them back. So the first guy is David Moore. I think he played pretty well last year. I think the games in which he, disappeared, there were some games there where he didn't really do anything. I think a lot of that can be attributed to the offense. I think a lot of that can be attributed to Wilson. I think that when David Moore was given a fair shake in this offense last year, he did do quite well. He made a lot of really nice plays for us. And I feel like he's earned a 1 year, $3 million deal. And I honestly think that in a normal year, he would probably get a good amount more than that. I think he would get closer to 4.5 or 5 million. So I would be pretty happy to bring back David Moore for 1 year, $3 million. Maybe you can get him for a little bit less because this is a weird offseason, but I kind of feel like this is his approximate value range. And I feel like because we have limited resources in the draft, we should probably go ahead and bring back somebody that we know is pretty good. Next name is Montre Moore. I think he did well last year in a reserve role. By the end of the year, he was barely playing, and actually not really playing at all on defense because we had our defensive ends healthy and ready to go. And I still don't think if we brought him back this year, he would play that much. But for a 1 year veteran minimum contract of $950,000, I think bringing back Montre Moore to be your fifth end or maybe even sixth end and a special team player is a good deal. I feel like he's quality depth if something happens to somebody else. So I would bring back Montre Moore for 1 year, $950,000. I don't think there's going to be a big demand for him because he did get suspended last year, but I feel like he's pretty good. And the last two guys on this keep list are guys we've already decided to keep. So I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on it because it's a moot point now, but Bryan Mone has proven that he can be a quality third defensive tackle in our defense. He did pretty well last year, I think. He showed me signs that he's more than just another guy. And I think the actual contract he got was 1 year, $850K. That's fine. I'm not going to grandstand over $50,000 in a salary cap that has over $180 million in it. But yeah, bringing back Mone on this cheap deal, great idea. And same thing with Ryan Neal. We brought him back on a 1 year, $850,000 deal, which is what I wanted to do. He showed me enough last year to prove that he's capable. He belongs in this league, and he might end up becoming something a little more than what he is right now. So, yeah, strike one is down. Strike two is down. Hopefully we keep bringing back some of these other players. Finally today, I'm going to go over the guys that I want to consider keeping. I kind of want them back, but I kind of think we could do better, and I don't care that much. I think that bringing back these players is kind of dependent on scenarios. Like, I want to bring back this player unless we get this player. I want to bring back this player unless our plan is to do this other thing. So I'll kind of walk through these players and the situations in which I would want to keep them and the situations in which I wouldn't. So Ethan Posick, I'm open to bringing him back because I think he's going to be very cheap, and I still feel like he might be good. I still feel like he might be a solid center that kind of got screwed over by the team and then screwed over by his concussion last year. So you can get him, I think, very cheap. I said 2 years, $6.5 million. Probably very easy to get out of the deal after 1 year. So I am open to bringing back Posick. Now, if we do what I want us to do in free agency or the draft, and we bring in a blue chip center, then I don't know if I want to pay a backup center $6.5 million. However, that's an option too. Not one I'm crazy about, but it's something worth considering. At the end of the day, there are players I would rather have at center than Posick. But if we brought back Posick, I would understand, and maybe I would even be willing to say that I'm a little intrigued by what he might bring to the table, to the team over the next couple years. Next guy on the list is running back Carlos Hyde. I say bring him back on a 1 year, $2 million deal if you don't bring in another running back. There are running backs available in free agency and maybe even the draft that I would rather have than Carlos Hyde. If you can't get them or you simply don't get them, then bringing back Carlos Hyde on a $2 million deal I think would be fine. I wouldn't be excited about it. There would be nothing to be jumping up and down about. But Carlos Hyde is a capable backup running back. He did some good things for us last year, and I would not be mad if he was our backup in 2021. I would not be excited. And there are some players I would rather have, which I'll get into later. Okay, next guy on this list would be Geno Smith. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. It doesn't really matter who our backup quarterback is. It doesn't matter. Whoever our backup quarterback is, we're not going to be having success if they ever have to come into the game. But Geno has a play style that is roughly similar to Russell Wilson. He's got some NFL experience. And if you have to have a backup, you could do worse than Geno. So I would be fine bringing him back on a 1-year, $1.2 million deal, which is the going rate for a pure backup quarterback these days. And I would also be okay with getting some equivalent or maybe even spending a late round pick or a UDFA slot on another quarterback. Next, we have Nick Bellore. He played well last year. He was a decent special teamer as well. He's clearly pretty good at what he does. What he does is not that interesting. And for me, looking at Nick Bellore, I think he's good, but who cares, right? He's a fullback. He doesn't do anything that important. If we don't have Nick Bellore, we can either run an offense that doesn't have a fullback, or we can get another fullback who probably won't be all that different. Whatever. You can bring him back. You can not bring him back. I'm pretty neutral on that one. So I say 1 year, $1.2 million if he wants to come back. If you can't bring him back, then go get some equivalent or just let Colby Parkinson play fullback. What's the damn difference? Or Will Dissly. All right, next name would be outside linebacker / defensive end Bruce Irvin. I think you can get him very cheap, which is why I'm open to this. He also has a little bit of flexibility. He can be your Leo outside linebacker. He can also be a defensive end. So if you're talking about a player who can give you half-decent snaps at Leo and defensive end for $1.5 million, that's pretty good. That's pretty solid, and I would be interested in bringing Bruce Irvin back as long as he's willing to play for this very cheap price. So if he wants more than this, it gets a little tougher to justify, but he already said he only wants to play in Seattle in 2021, so you kind of have a lot of leverage there. So, Bruce Irvin, maybe keep. If he's at this price, I would actually say go ahead and bring him back. If he wants more, then I'm a little more hesitant, but it doesn't make that big of a deal. You can easily find a Bruce Irvin replacement. Next, we have offensive tackle Cedric Ogbuhi, who, well, my eye test says he was really bad last year. The experts say he wasn't that bad last year. So at the end of the day, we do need some depth on our offensive line. We have guys on this offensive line who are severe age risks, injury risks, like Dwayne Brown. We need somebody behind Brandon Shell because Shell has already gotten hurt a couple times as a Seahawk. So to me, Cedric Ogbuhi, while he's not great, is a viable option to be a backup tackle for us. And again, I want to stress, bringing him back would be fine for $1.3 million, by the way. He needs to take a big pay cut from last year because he just isn't any better than a guy who makes $1.3 million a year. But finding a replacement, like maybe drafting an Alaric Jackson late in the draft would be good. But you do need some sort of tackle depth, I think, and Cedric Ogbuhi would be a feasible way to achieve that. Finally, I kind of threw this guy on at the last second because I wanted another safety, but Lano Hill, who only played in 2 games last year and has generally been a disappointment in his career, 1 year, $910,000, which I believe would be the minimum amount you can pay him given his level of NFL experience, would be fine. Again, this is another area where I think you could bring in an undrafted rookie free agent, pay him a little bit less, and it would be just as fine, but I'm ambivalent. I think Lano Hill actually made a couple plays last year before he got hurt, for whatever that's worth. So these 7 guys, we can bring them back and it's fine. We can not bring them back as long as we bring in an equivalent replacement or a plan to make their role irrelevant, and it's fine too. I'm not terribly excited about any of this, but I'm good with it too. It would be fine. Either way the team decides to go on these guys, it's good, but that's what I would start this offseason with. Bring back these 7 guys on approximately the contracts I had proposed, and consider keeping the next 7 guys contingent on what else you decide to do. So that's going to do it for part 1. In part 2, I'm going to go over the players that I want the Seahawks to bring in, and at that point, we'll just be able to go over what my 2021 roster would look like if I get what I want. All right. Peace out. Go Hawks. See you guys tomorrow. We are almost there, guys. I know the rumor mill has been exhausting this offseason, but we are almost to the real stuff. Peace out.